My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask you for pardon of my sins and grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Well, if the truth be told, today's gospel is a little bit complicated. And it's a gospel passage that gives rise to a certain amount of discussion amongst the theologians. And we don't have the time to go into that. Instead, I just want us to look at, in this time of prayer, one line in the gospel which is deceptively important. And it's the line where Jesus says this: the man who can be trusted in little things can be trusted in great. The man who is dishonest in little things will be dishonest in great. So in a word, Jesus, you are saying to all of us, little things are much more important than you realize. Little things decide if we can be trusted with heaven, really. When we look at Jesus, we see in the gospel how very often Jesus asks his disciples to look after little things. Pope Francis gives a lovely kind of list of them in his letter Gaudete et Exsultate. Listen to this: the little detail that wine was running out at a party, the little detail that one sheep was missing, the little detail of noticing the widow who offered her 2 small coins, the little detail of having spare oil for the lamps should the bridegroom delay, the little detail of asking the disciples how many loaves of bread they had, the little detail of having a fire burning and a fish cooking as he waited for the disciples at daybreak. It's very true. That's just maybe almost like a random selection. How often Jesus is showing how something which, well, we might say, well, it's only a small thing, that's only a little thing, that's not very important. Jesus is saying to us, don't be silly, it is important. And when we think about it, it's really all that we have. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, whose feast day we celebrate in a little over a week, she says this: great deeds are forbidden me. I cannot preach the gospel, nor shed my blood, but what does it matter? My brothers and sisters, love proves itself by deeds, and how should I prove mine? Great deeds are forbidden me. I will scatter flowers, little sacrifices. It's very nice. So she's saying, well, in her life there in the Carmel in France, what can she do? She can't do heroic things. She can't go off on the missions. She can't become a martyr. All she can do is scatter flowers, little sacrifices, the small things. And it's true, we're very like her in the sense that we're not going to probably end up a martyr or go off into some foreign land to evangelize the people there. We just have small things. Or, well, 2.5 million seconds of life, if we live 85 years. 700,000 little breaths, again, if we live 85 years. And then all the tiny tasks that fill every day, from the moment we open up our little eyes in the morning to the night, to the time we close them again at the end of the day. Just one little task after another. The huge heroic things, martyrdoms, all that kind of stuff, they just probably won't happen. The little things are what we really have. And another saint, St. Francis of Sales, he makes the same observation. Great opportunities to serve God come seldom, but little ones surround us daily. Now, another thing about little things, which is very important, is that they prove our good intention. Or in other words, the little things reveal where our heart is. Remember when Jesus is in the temple watching people putting in their sacrifices in the treasuries where people made their donations, and he's watching people, some people putting in very large sums. And as far as I know, actually, they did have a hired trumpeter to blow a trumpet when they would be making their donation. Literally, blowing their own trumpet, so that people would know, this guy's putting in, I don't know, 500,000 shekels into the donation. Wow, this is amazing. And a poor widow comes up, and she has just got 2 copper coins, which is a penny, which is so little. And she puts them in. And Jesus is so delighted with this. He calls his disciples and he says, truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the treasury. Now we would say she just put in a penny. It's virtually almost nothing. They put in shekels and shekels. How can you say that she has put in more than all those others? And Jesus points out, they all contributed out of their abundance, money they had left over really, but she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, her whole living. It's her whole heart goes into those 2 little copper coins, and it shows so clearly she is not seeking her own glory, but the glory of God. The others, with their trumpets being blown, they're seeking their glory, not the glory of God. So Jesus says she has put in more than all the others. It only appears to be little, but it's big. What she has done is very big. Another little thing about these little things is pointed out by St. John Chrysostom. And he says, he who disregards small sins, little by little falls into greater ones. So that brings out what Jesus is saying there. The man who is dishonest in little things will be dishonest in great things. They may be very small, a little lie that we tell to protect our pride, a little theft, nothing very big, a couple of small little things at work, a couple of little theft of time that doesn't belong to us but belongs to the boss. Well, something they won't really notice going missing from the office. A minor bit of indulgence in gossip about somebody. Well, did you hear the latest about such and such who works in sales? Those kind of things train our heart to settle for less than truth and less than love. Little by little, we are growing more accustomed to telling the lies, to making the little thefts, to the little dishonesties or gossip about people, little by little. And, there's that phrase where we talk about a beaten path. A beaten path, you walk through a field once and it's kind of hard because you're walking through the long grass, but then you walk through it again the next day and the next day and the next day. And then you have a beaten path. And it's very easy to walk along a beaten path. And so the first time we're beating a path towards dishonesty, towards greater sins. So that's another reason, the kind of negative one, but why these little things are so important, because when they're bad things, they lead to worse. Finally, just to say that these little things really they're only little in appearance. They're little because they don't last long, or they are something apparently unimportant, a small sum of money, like that widow, the 2 small coins, a very tiny amount of money. So it appears to be little. But the big part of this is in the heart, is in the interior virtue that leads a person, like the widow, to give that money. Like Jesus, the small, tiny things Jesus does for people, beautiful acts of service, like St. Thérèse of Lisieux, scattering those flowers, very small, but actually, really, the smallness, their littleness, is only an appearance. In reality, these are big, very big things. So let's ask Jesus, help us to see that. Help us to see that these little things are really not so little. I give you thanks, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask you for help to put them into effect. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.